Imagine a world where the most powerful man in Christendom, the Pope, could throw all-night parties with wine, gambling, and fireworks, and then die from a cold he caught at one of these wild gatherings. This is the story of Pope Leo X, a man who lived a life of luxury and extravagance, but whose actions had far-reaching consequences for the Catholic Church and the entire Christian world. Pope Leo X, born Giovanni de' Medici, became the leader of the Catholic Church in 1513. He wasn't a bad person, but he didn't care much about religion. For him, it was all about learning, living well, and running the Medici family, one of the most powerful families in Italy. He even led military campaigns and spent a fortune on wars. According to one of his treasurers, he spent 5 million ducats during his 7 years as pope, which is like spending billions of dollars today. He left behind debts that were so huge, they would take years to pay off. Leo was determined to defeat the French king, Francis I, but not because of any deep political reasons. He just wanted to see France lose. His efforts didn't pay off much. He only gained 2 small provinces in northern Italy, but the cost was enormous. By the time he was done, Germany, Switzerland, and Scandinavia had started to break away from the Catholic Church, thanks to a new movement called Protestantism. This was a huge blow to the Church's power and influence. Despite all this, Leo couldn't resist a good party. On the last night of November 1521, he threw a massive banquet at the Vatican. It was a night of fine wines, champagne, gambling, music, and entertainment. His nephews and cousins, all of whom he had made cardinals, joined in the fun. Leo had a great time, but the next morning he felt sick. By noon he had a high fever, and by nightfall he was dead. He was only 46 years old, and he left the church bankrupt. There wasn't even enough money to buy candles for his funeral. His last act was to spend what little was left. People in Rome weren't kind to Leo after his death. They said he would have sold Rome, then Christ, and then himself if he could. A historian named Francesco Vittori wrote that Leo had left the papacy in a terrible state, and the church's reputation was at its lowest point in years. When the cardinals gathered to choose a new pope, they were in a difficult position. They needed someone who could clean up the mess Leo had left behind. In a surprising turn of events, they chose Adrian Cardinal Bohens, a Dutchman who wasn't even in Rome at the time. The cardinals had never heard of him, and they called him the Barbarian. But Adrian was exactly what the church needed. He was a former professor and a reformer. In his first speech to the cardinals, he told them that the church was corrupt, and that they couldn't even smell their own sins anymore. He tried to end the sale of indulgences, cut the church's budget, and ensure that only qualified people became priests. But the Italian cardinals and the church's bureaucracy, the Curia, didn't like his ideas. They blocked his reforms at every turn. After just a year in office, Adrian died, and no one mourned his passing. The cardinals, feeling guilty about their mistake, chose a new pope, Giulio de' Medici, a cousin of Leo X, who became Pope Clement VII. Clement was a weak and indecisive leader. He tried to play the French king, Francis I, and the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V, against each other. He made secret deals with both, but they found out and he lost their trust. Italy became a war zone. 2 English travelers wrote about the terrible conditions they saw. They described starving children and empty fields, where there used to be farms and vineyards. Clement never thought that Rome itself could be attacked. He made enemies, including a powerful cardinal named Pompeo Colonna, who wanted to be pope. Colonna plotted to kill Clement, and led a raid on the Vatican in 1526. Some of Clement's household members were killed, but Clement escaped through a secret passageway built by a previous pope. Colonna's men dressed up in the pope's robes and mocked him in St. Peter's Square. This should have been a warning to Clement, but he didn't listen. Instead, he hired mercenaries to destroy Colonna's property and declared himself the winner. But the real disaster was yet to come. The Holy Roman Emperor Charles V was angry with Clement for his alliances with France. In 1527, Charles's soldiers, who were unpaid and angry, marched on Rome. They broke into the city, killed thousands of people, and looted the Vatican. Clement fled to the Castel Sant'Angelo, a fortress in Rome, and was trapped there for months. This event, known as the Sack of Rome, was one of the most brutal and shocking attacks in European history. It showed how weak and vulnerable the church had become. The sack of Rome had long-lasting effects. It weakened the power of the Catholic Church and showed that even the Pope couldn't protect his own city. It also marked the beginning of a new era in European history, where the balance of power shifted away from the Church and towards the rising nation-states. For Pope Clement VII, it was a tragic end to his papacy. He died in 1534, a broken and embittered man, having failed to protect the Church and the city he was supposed to lead. The story of Pope Leo X and Pope Clement VII is a reminder of the dangers of corruption, mismanagement, and the consequences of poor leadership. It shows how the actions of a few can have a profound impact on the world, and how the legacy of a leader can be shaped by their decisions, both good and bad. In the end, it is a cautionary tale about the importance of integrity, responsibility, and the need for reform in institutions that serve the people.